So I think be ready with the questions, but couple of things before we start, with all the people here, and obviously over tea and dinner, and also we'll get a chance to speak to all of them. So couple of questions, and couple of observations. One is I'm always worried about how much do we involve the grassroots people or their knowledge when we talk about the technology. So like if you talk about us at GOONJ, last year we made about 600 kilometers of village roads, or we dig large number of wells. And the kind of villages most of us work, if we keep waiting for the technology and machines, it will take another 50 years to reach. So we are still happy by using a coconut, where the people in the villages have these 3-4 different ways of finding water. So one of the learned person, really learned in the sense learned in that particular knowledge, he roams around with a coconut. At a particular place, the coconut changes the position, and that person tells you that there is water. People like us wearing good clothes laugh, because the belief of people in the bad clothes is superstition for the people in good clothes. That's how I see life. But ultimately you find water, right? So I'm just wondering, and also similarly when we are talking about ATMs and water purifications, there are different ways of doing it, which hundreds and thousands of people are already doing it in the villages with traditional approaches. So the whole idea is that are we here to replace those things, or we are really respecting that traditional knowledge, and also in parallel or with that we are building up more, because this country does not need either or. This country ultimately needs and. There cannot be one solution of anything. So anyone, if you can share any traditional knowledge or technology, if I call, I mean this is such a sad country where the innovation from the grassroots, people like us call jugaad. So we ourselves, really devalue that. It's not jugaad, it is an innovation. So anything which we remember in any of the work where we have valued the local wisdom or the grassroots wisdom and have added in our work. I mean, for all of us to know.
See, one thing that probably we do is that when we work in a particular committee, we work with the local. So we call this the youth volunteering, community youth volunteers. So these people are from actually that particular community. So our grassroots level workers are from that community. So see, a program is a standard program, but you need to contextualize it to the local environment. So these people actually bring in that local contextualization, and they're able to deliver it. So it has basically, our standard technology and the learning processes, and it's implemented based on the local conditions by the local youth over there, so which is contextualizing. So I don't know if this kind of meets that example that you're thinking about.
No, it's fine. I think we just need to think through. I mean, because at the end of the day, it happened with me also. 20 years back, 11, 12 years back, I laughed when I saw this coconut thing happening. But then I thought that, maybe 20 years back when we didn't have technology or we didn't have machines, every single village used to have a well. So there was some traditional knowledge working.
So there was a science behind it, actually.
There was a science behind it.
Absolutely.
Anyone else want to add something?
Yeah, so like when we look at NGOs, right, we very rarely will question what they do and why they do it. We'll ask questions of how do you do it, or explain to me why it works, or explain to us how various things like. But we never question their fundamental premise, because we believe that they know way more about that sector and their field of expertise than we do. And we think of ourselves as, hey, we are going to try to help you implement your vision, your understanding. We just see ourselves as facilitators rather than disputing what they have to tell us. We get educated in the process.
Sure. Can we have the timer here if at all we have time for questions? I don't see any. Yeah, so that we know before we take the questions from the audience. There's no timer here in the how much time. Yeah, anyone else?
So, couple of things. I think you're raising 3 questions. One is the local knowledge respected enough in the way the non-profit or the social sector is approaching problem solving? So, one is what Jayant has said, saying involving the local people. That's there. The second is, I think this goes back to what you would call the nature of knowledge, so to say. What works is what works, right? So the questioning what hasn't worked and then trying to come up with solution has been the approach, at least what I would say at Sarvajal. Now, I give you examples, not only including local people and understanding from them. Most of our operator entrepreneurs are from those villages. But say Jal Shakti Abhiyan recently. Now, frankly, about 16 months, 18 months back, we didn't have much of a knowledge of the water conservation structures and, what should be done where. We had very broad, sort of superficial knowledge of that. But working in 16 different districts, not only the village level people, but even those JENs and XENs who are normally considered saying, oh, they are part of the problem. But they've actually never been given a platform to exchange their good ideas and talk to each other about saying what you can do better. And we believe saying there's so much to learn. Yes, with the coconut kind of thing, you may still not be able to put a equation to it, so why it is happening. So you might see it happening. And I think we should not ignore that part also. Yes, we should learn locally, but we should not let go of the question why. Because otherwise, I think this country has enough of knowledge on how these things also get stressed beyond their application. So that's another submission I guess we need to keep in mind. Yeah.
Can I open it up, and if you have any question? Oh, look at that. Fine.
Hi, my name is Pia and I represent Sahyog Foundation. Contrary to the popular belief that nonprofits shy away from technology, I've been observing an explosion of app development in the sector. And I wanted to hear the panel's view on that.
Explosion of app development?
Yes.
Oh, because that's a tech people think that by creating roti.com you can provide roti. Well, that's a valid question we must answer. Anyone else? I think let's just take 2, 3 together. Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah. Okay.
Mike, I have a question to Anupama. Like you guys have been doing a great initiative in education sector. My question is like I have experience of 12 schools in Assam in rural schools. So among 12 schools, only in one school, the class 1 standard kids can like write ABCD. In rest 11 school, even class 3-4 kids, like 50% of the kids cannot write ABCD. Like it's not entirely the fault of the teachers. Thing is that we have a program of midday meal in Assam. And most of the students, like I got feedback from the teachers that they come only for the midday meal. Because all the like parents were like working in fields or like their labors, they like entirely whole day they will be like out of home. And like after school, they never studies. Even in evening, they will sleep by 7. So how to like we have to penetrate those problems, so how to cover those problems. Like what I did in only one school from last 2 years, we have like given some like reward systems among kids. Like the top 10 students will get some tours to zoo, to some other educational like institute or something. So there is a like increase in like the percentage of marks and everything. But how to do something for entire like Assam or the entire parts of Assam or like Northeast or even India. So how to do this like stuff in whole India, in rural parts.
Cool.
So I don't have any idea actually.
Fine, no issues. Nagma, you want, and then maybe we'll just take 4 and then answer. Yeah.
No, I want to link actually 3 things. What you said, what Donald has presented, and her question. See, when we are looking at technology, rather than it being rare and feared of, we are also seeing an alternative explosion of all and any kinds of solutions. So while we are talking about this, it would be interesting to determine the difference between technology for supporting organizational processes and technology for supporting delivery. These two are very different. Also, as leading organizations who've used it in either delivery or in processes, if and taking off again from Donald here, if we show it enough to the rest of them, and if we make it a little more open source, it would probably, decode a lot of these myths that are going around. Really placing that for deliberation here, that we cannot bucket all technology as one big technology. There is delivery and process, and both are looked at very differently.
Sure. One, that gentleman, last question, maybe, for this thing. Yeah.
My name is Sumit Joshi, and I'm coming from Satwa Consulting. My question is to Mr. Donald Lobo. You spoke about tech for development, and I believe that it will require a lot of knowledge sharing, a lot of sharing of best practices, maybe capacity building of non-profits as well. So do you see there is a play for cohort capacity building of non-profits? Because I was browsing through your website and I saw that you work on capacity building and work on leveraging the technology to do so. So what are your views on that?
Uh, Fine. So Donald, if you can answer this, and then we will take up the education and the app.
Yeah. So, that's a really hard question, primarily because I think capacity building is such a broad area, and I don't think one organization or one foundation can really do it by themselves, and that's where I think collaboratives and communities are really important. And that's where we've got to do it as a group, and so that's what we are doing as a foundation, and even with companies and conferences, right? We try to get multiple people at the table at the same time to help us with the whole project and mission. And that's how I see us going forward. I mean, probably because I think the problem is way too big for any one organization to do it by yourselves. And so our approach is always to reach out to other people, both funders, nonprofits, and other organizations to help us with it. So like Tech for Dev isn't run by one organization. It's a collaborative of already 10 partners, because that's the way to scale, in my opinion.
And I think fundamentally one important part for the people sitting here is also, again, I'm coming back to the language of it, because whenever you talk about the development sector or the NGOs per se, we all treat NGOs also as beneficiaries. Right? I mean, in any case, it's a very demeaning word. I mean, no one is donor, no one is beneficiary. We all are a stakeholder. So first thing is that language ultimately has to go. But whenever we get a lot of internship, options from people, and these management institute, this engineering institute write to us, and their opening letter will actually start like this: they are the brightest brain of India. So you often wonder, how can I call myself the brightest brain of India, right? And then they also come that they will solve your problem. How do you know that we have a problem? Right? I think so. Until unless whether it is tech or non-tech, whatever solutions we are talking about, most important part is that it has to be a relationship of equal, and you need to understand that these guys have some big kida in their mind. That's why they have started something in remote villages somewhere. And without us also, without us, whether it is tech, non-tech money, they're working, they are progressing, they're doing the bit, whatever best they can do. And a large number of us, to be honest, really need to learn scale from the not-for-profit sector. We can always say roti.com banane se roti nahi milti, but in this sector, even without that, people have done wonders. I mean, what you saw today also, large number of the scale has come without those interventions. Even 5 years, 6 years back, people really scaled up. So coming back to the app thing, if someone wants to answer, and also the education part.
Yeah, I can go with that. The question was, how do we reach out to the remote parts of India, and specifically Assam was the question asked. The way that we work with, whenever we are working with states, we do work with governments, and most of the time there are some funders who are enabling us to set up a lab in a particular school. That is the way we have been, setting up MindSpark labs in states like Rajasthan, and now in Telangana, in Himachal Pradesh, and these are all very remote parts of the states. I have personally visited some of these schools in Rajasthan, and have seen the situation wherein you don't have teachers coming in and teaching students, and Sanskrit teacher teaching mathematics, and and how that situation improved because of some of these labs that we had set up, and where students started coming in and enjoying the learning experience itself. So the way it works out most of the time is, setting up relationship with the government as well as the funders.
So I'll add to that. I think that's a technological bit. It's a very interesting question first on Assam. I think it's not limited to Assam. The issue of foundational learning skills, okay, that is reading and basic numeracy, okay, in early grades at the end of class 3 is an issue across the country. Okay, kids coming out of grade 3, 40, 50%, okay, can't read simple sentences and can't do simple numeracy operations like addition, subtraction of 2 digits. And the reasons for that are quite a few. And the good news is, I think the government is realizing that there are lots of initiatives working on that. Technology is an enabler, but it can't necessarily solve the problem. For example, China has 500,000 schools. We have more than 1.3 million schools, okay, across the country, both private and public. Now, there are 2 reasons which cause the problem. Okay, one is in our zeal to set up schools closer to children, we set up a lot more schools, but we have schools which are single teacher schools. Okay, I don't know how many of you have traveled, and the education community calls them multi-grade schools. That means there's one teacher, one classroom, and she's simultaneously teaching kids from grade 1 to grade 5. Now, I mean, that's a big challenge. At the same time, you teach kids from grade 1 to grade 5, one teacher, not motivated, will come sometimes, will not come sometimes. So the quality of the input is impacted by a significant number of these multi-grade schools. Now, having said that, there are states which are dialing back on these multi-grade schools. For example, Rajasthan has a program, they had 80,000 schools, and they did a GIS mapping, used data of every single school in Rajasthan, and they have shut all the multi-grade schools which were within 1 or 1.5 kilometers of larger schools. They've consolidated the schools because larger schools function better. That's why China has 500,000, but large schools. Okay, and they reduced the schools from 85,000 to 65,000. So they're kind of resolving the problem. The other problem is we have this interesting moving from public schools or government schools to private schools. And the big attraction is to learn English, okay, which in everybody's thought and mind, parents in their wisdom think it's good for the kid. But there's a lot of very good research which establishes that children should learn to read and write in their mother tongue. Okay, so unfortunately what is happening is you said A, B, C, D, okay, and that 50% of our kids now in private schools, government schools share reduces by 1.5% every year, okay, and so the competition language also is complicating the thing. Teachers are not well motivated and trained. So these things are resulting in these failures. But there are lots of states now which are working, okay, in terms of establishing that. There are lots of countries which have had this problem, which have resolved this problem. Kenya has something called Tusomi program. Okay, Peru has a program where they measure kids at the end of class 3. And the phrase they have is that you first learn to read and then you read to learn. So you can't really become a self-learner unless you know how to read and you know basic maths. So they have...
Ashok, can we also need an answer on the app part? And because I don't know, if no one is giving us signal, we can go on
Okay, I'll take half a second more.
Yeah, please.
Okay. So I think like Gujarat is working on foundational learning, okay, where they'll measure this and they'll ensure that all the kids who come out from grade 3 can do this by improving the performance of the 50% kids who are not. Long answer to a short question. Okay, and technology will also help, but 1.2 million schools, we don't have the money to go around to.
So last thing, I am really keen to know the answer of the app part.
So I think I agree with the observation. There is expansion of app, but this is also dependent upon where you are sort of approaching the problem from. So if you are outcome oriented and you want to make sure saying water is getting delivered every day, app is not going to help you or roti.com is not going to help you. But if you realize saying yes, there is a certain offline infrastructure that already exists, it does not talk to each other and information gap is the gap, then app might be very useful, right? So I think to Nagma's point, if I got the name right, yeah, the question was around saying, what are you trying to solve? Are you trying to improve service delivery? then obviously you need, brick and mortar pieces of technology also. And if you are trying to solve information gap and make the different parts work together, then obviously app kind of things can help and add value. The last part to it is also many of us encounter this as part of a sort of development cycle of an organization. When you want to scale, there's a compulsion of giving the donor or the funding community better and greater impact data, right? I didn't talk in my presentation, but we are like real-time, online, automated data that you can access, right? It's not an app, but the point I'm trying to make is, if you want to expand the good you believe in, and saying there's someone else who has the resources to help you do that, and if that requires an app, a lot of people would go in that direction because it's solving the information gap problem again.
So
Great.
I'll add a bit because the question was education and apps. Just take half a minute. Yeah, there are lots of apps and online educational MOOCs available for you to learn. There's been an explosion in that. But the use case, okay, over the last 2-3 years when it's been tested out is, even if you look at Khan Academy, okay, only 2 or 3% of the users in most of these apps are what you'd call power users. That means you spend enough time, okay, to get comprehensive learning. A lot of the users come there once, twice, or come there occasionally to use it as reference. So, I mean, the jury is out whether they're clearly not a replacement, whether they can effectively be a substitute or they're going to be supplementary.
So, good, very nice. And tomorrow also you all need to jello us. All of us will be here for the same panel almost on a little bit different subject. Two things. One, in terms of data and all what we just saw, that's absolutely impressive. But if you saw the data of the problem all across the country and all those indexes, whatever we say, but we all know what is happening across the globe, across the country, I think that's pretty scary. One thing which I'm leaving all of you, including the panel, to answer tomorrow. Is this a time in this country where you have problems in plenty, you need solutions in plenty, you also need people to work on those problems in plenty? I mean, it's all game of volume. As an organization which is trying to work on so-called excellence, very process-oriented, if I talk about GOONJ, I am also personally struggling, and I want all of you to struggle at least for a day so that we get an answer tomorrow. Is this the time that we really talk about 100 good, then 1 best? That's a question which we are struggling. Whether it's a compromise or what, I don't know. But I'm really understanding and I'm really thinking that is it a good idea to maybe work more on the creating 100 goods, then really creating one ideal village, one model to be implemented, which mostly does not happen. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow again. Thank you.